Welcome. I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne, and I have an expertise in strategic leadership and culture. And today I want to just kind of talk to you about leading transformation in the modern era. Now, here's the thing: if your organization is not transforming, then you risk becoming extinct and no longer needed. So, with today's Q&A, our open office hour session, it's going to be brief. We're going to move very quickly. We're going to answer some of the questions that I've received on driving transformation. So, if you want to have your questions answered, then make sure that you are actually emailing them. I'll make sure I get you the link. But really quickly, you can go to Payne at smpistrategies.com, Payne at smpistrategies.com, and submit your questions there. I will answer your questions. You don't necessarily have to be on this forum to have your question answered. So first question, what are the key drivers of transformation in today's business landscape? I'm glad you asked. I want you to think about this technology. Technology is continuously shifting, it's changing, it's evolving, it's getting faster, and it's designed to help us to improve how we actually do our work. And so technological advancements, they're accelerating change, particularly in industries like AI, automation, and data analytics. So I want you to really kind of think about that as a key driver of transformation. Also, the shifting market dynamics. So when you think about globalization and changing consumer behaviors, they're forcing organizations to change and to adapt. The COVID-19 pandemic, oh my gosh, it really underscored the need for digitalization as well as remote work capabilities. So we saw a lot of shifting there. And so when we think about these drivers collectively, they actually create a dynamic and ever evolving, changing business environment for us, right? So we cannot continue to do business as we have done in the past. You've got to think about, how is technology helping your organization? How is it powering your organization? Technology can be a fantastic thing, especially when we're looking at the digital era, but I want you to think about, how can you actually best use that? What you don't want is, number one, your technology to become extinct, or it's so technologically difficult for your users to actually use and to really understand that it's not helping to move your organization forward and really helping you to deliver the best possible response and results to your employees as well as to the customers that you actually serve. So technology is a huge one. Next question. How can CEOs ensure that their organizations stay agile and adaptable in the face of rapid change? Here's the thing. Most CEOs will say that with leadership, the number one leadership capability is the ability to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to shift. When we think about this, fostering a culture of innovation and continuous learning is absolutely crucial. It's actually critical. You've got to be able to upskill as well as reskill your talent. You've got to be able to encourage your teams to experiment and learn from both their successes as well as their failures. Now, this can be a huge challenge for some leaders and organizations, as you are not necessarily open to allowing people to fail, but you got to be able to allow them to fail forward. The ability to be able to learn from your mistakes, the ability to be able to learn from those things that have gone well are paramount. They are key to you being able to stay agile and adaptable. So when you're launching your transformation initiatives, when you're launching your projects, I want you guys to come back and talk about, have a lessons learned, right? A post-mortem. What did we do well? What could we have improved upon? What actually happened? How could we have done this better? And so encourage your teams to actually experiment, allow them to fail. Decentralized decision-making to empower employees at all levels to be able to make quick, informed decisions. Do your decisions have to come from a particular person at the very top, or can employees actually make decisions that empower them at the lowest of levels? So, for example, when we think about Zappos, we know that that's an organization that has truly has a strong culture, right? And then also a very powerful employee experience. They allow decision making at the customer service level, at one of the lowest levels within an organization. They're able to be able to say, I think we should do this, or I think we should do that, and why. When you think about how employees feel happy and rewarded at work, how do they stay adaptable? How are they growing? How do you stay agile? It's the decisions that the leaders actually make and the empowerment of the employees that actually makes that so. I want you to invest in technology and data analytics to stay ahead of the market changes and the customer preferences, and use data not to drive your decisions, but to inform your decisions. And that's the difference, right? And so that's how you stay agile and adaptable. I know I mentioned employees and fostering that culture of innovation and continuous learning, but I also want you to think about it from the leadership perspective. So often we have leaders, and the leaders actually go through some type of training, and then we assume that they are well equipped to be able to move the organization forward, right? And think about the current needs as well as the future needs of the organization, and be able to see things from an enterprise lens. That's not always the case. And so I want you to think about, how can we actually ensure that your leaders are continuously growing as well, and that they are have a clear understanding of what's actually happening within your organization, what's happening within the market, what's happening with your competitors as well, and then what's on the horizon. So continuously investing in your leaders is going to be the key to actually staying successful. So next question. What role does culture play in successful transformation initiatives? And how can it be shaped to support change? Wow, that's a big one. And I'm going to tell you why. You see, you encourage employees to embrace change as an opportunity for personal as well as professional development. We all know those people. Everybody's not like me. I absolutely love change. And my community has always said that I have always been a transformationist, as well as a person who embraces change. And I'm a rapid adopter of change, right? But that's not the case for everybody. And so I want you to really think about the mindset of your employees. For some, change is going to be a grieving process. It's going to be a challenging process. It's going to be where they begin to think about out with the old and in with the new. And what does this actually mean for me, and how am I impacted? So I want you to think about, how do you encourage your employees to embrace change? One key way you can do this is not only by leading by example, but also involve your employees in the process. Help them to think about their change and their transformation story. Help them to think about, what does this actually mean for me? How can this actually make my life better? How can I become more effective and impactful at the work that I do? When you're thinking about supporting change, it's essential, absolutely essential. It's critical that you cultivate a culture of trust, because when people don't trust it, they don't support it, right? And so we don't want the atmosphere, the culture, the negativity to weigh your transformation efforts down. Create that culture of trust. How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? How can we make this better? Here's why we're doing this. Do you ever tell your employees why we're doing this, and what does this actually mean to them? Communicate, and communicate often, communicate clearly, and communicate in a variety of formats. And then I want you to think about that growth mindset again. How are we growing with this particular transformation, not only for the organization, but for you as a person? You see, culture plays a pivotal part in your successful transformation. It really shapes how your employees respond to change, how they collaborate and partner with each other, how they think about problem solving, how they attack problem solving. How do you actually unleash their creativity, as well as your ability to innovate with your transformation efforts? That's why it's absolutely essential that you get the culture piece down correctly. Let's talk about some misconceptions and some myths. Some of you guys have asked, what are some myths about transformation that you should actually be aware of? One key myth I've seen so often is that it comes from the top, or it's only impacting leaders, and then the ones at the bottom are the ones who have to kind of just deal with it. That's a myth. Transformation, yes, it's top down, but it's also bottom up. And you should be thinking about it from both lenses. I want you to think about what your employees are doing to push that transformation and make it happen, and what needs to happen from their lens and from their end, but also from the leaders. You got to get behind it, right? You can't have those naysayers who are saying it's not going to work and why it's not going to work, or this is just a CEO or a top leadership initiative. Absolutely not. Or you can't have the employees or the leaders who just push it off to one person and say, hey, we're going to make this person responsible for it. That never works. It just doesn't work. And so I want you to think about, when your transformation efforts, is it strategic as well as tactical? Realignment, value creation, cultural shifts, process improvements. Those are all some things that you can actually transform your organization. It doesn't have to just be technology, because sometimes people think that, when you're thinking about transformation, we're thinking about it from a technology standpoint, right? But perhaps it's from transforming where your place in the market. Perhaps it's transforming how you actually do business. Perhaps it's transforming your structure of your organization. Maybe you're too top heavy. Maybe you're too flat. I want you to think about that. Maybe it's transforming, again, your culture. Maybe it's moving from a centralized organization, right, to things are decentralized. How can you ensure that you have the correct processes and procedure improvements as well? Another myth, a huge myth or misconception about transformation is that it must be rapid. It's got to be quick. It's got to be fast, right? We live in a hurried world, a fast world, and it's got to be disruptive. We just got to disrupt some things, and we just kind of like that word, right? But in fact, sustainable transformation, it actually involves incremental changes. When you have a huge transformation, you're doing everything at once. That creates stress and pressure on the organization as well as your employees. So, how can you make an incremental change, an incremental shift where you maybe perhaps right now, this year, we're focusing on this, and maybe next year we're going to focus on this, or maybe it's these next quarter, we're focused on this particular effort. And then we get everybody on board rather than this rapid disruptive change that really kind of sends your organization in panic mode and you begin to react instead of respond. So I want you to think about that when you're thinking about just some common myths and misconceptions about leading transformation. The other thing I want you to think about is when you're thinking about leading transformation is that it has to be done and led by an internal person in the organization or an external a company or platform or consulting firm outside of the organization. Not necessarily true, right? It can be and situation. Maybe perhaps you're partnering with another organization or entity. And then also it's maybe being led inside. It could be led by a team or a project team, so to speak, not just the executive leadership team. So how can you actually infuse transformation within your organization so that it actually works for you? Another myth and misconception is that it's costly. Yeah, there's a potential impact, but I like to think of it more as an investment in your future than how much this is actually cost. I think the lens of that, especially as you're sharing where you're headed, why you're going there, what will this mean to your stakeholders, can be a tremendous difference. And you will begin to see that it does not have to be as expensive as you actually think that it is. Let's look at one of our, we have a couple more questions that have been submitted. So what are the ethical considerations in leading transformation, particularly regarding employees and stakeholders? One of the things I would say is making sure that when you're thinking about your stakeholders, especially your employees, your customers, whatever, shareholders, transparency and communication. Wow. You have no idea how many times we've seen transformation efforts taking place behind the scenes and your employees don't even know it. Your leaders, some of your leaders don't even know it. Maybe it's reserved for a few. Employees and stakeholders should be well informed about the changes, the reasons for the changes, and the potential impact. Just spell it out, tell the truth. Honesty builds trust, and it fosters that sense of inclusion that you want to have when we go back to the previous question that was about culture, right? And so it is crucial that you actually maintain open and transparent communication throughout your transformation process. Let people know where you are on the transformation grid or your transformation journey, right? Another thing is fairness and equity. So ensure that changes are implemented fairly and equitably within the organization. And this means considering the well-being of all employees, not just a select few, of all stakeholders, not just a select few. It's avoiding favoritism. You know how it is that, you're going through a transformation and we're going to keep these people or we're going to keep these projects because, we really like this person and we're going to get rid of the others. And it can have a significant impact on the mindset as well as the sustainability and the culture of your organization. I want you to think about addressing any disparities that may arise out of the transformation. You think about, transformation again, look at it from a DE&I lens. Look at it from what is the impact on this to all those who are involved. Respect for an individual right. I want you to respect the individual rights and privacy of your employees and other stakeholders. This includes protecting, of course, sensitive data, respecting confidentiality. Some people are not going to be open to it. They're not going to like it. And so I want you to be respectful of that, right? Sometimes we think everybody should just get on board. If they don't get on board, they're not with us. That's not necessarily always the case. People process information differently. I was speaking to a client just last week, and she was sharing with me about how her organization is going through transformation and what does this actually mean, and how she shared with employees, you should do this, and this is the response you should have. I can share with her that you sit in a different lens and you look a little bit differently. And so perhaps were you a little bit insensitive in that particular conversation, especially when you're on a line with your coworkers or your team. Everyone processes differently. Just because they're not on board today does not mean that they won't get on board. Perhaps all of their questions have not been answered, or maybe that's their natural reaction, or they've been in the organization for a number of years and they've seen this over and over and over. And so they're just a little bit uncomfortable, right? We're living in a different day and time. I want you to think about the long-term impact. So consider the long-term ethical implications of the transformation. So assess how the changes will impact, again, your employees, your stakeholders, the broader community. We're living in a time where we have a social as well as an environmental responsibility. And so think about, what is the impact to that? What's the well-being of your employees? Are you putting way too much stress on them and pressure? Ensure that the transformation process you guys have outlined does not impact their physical or their mental well-being, and provide the necessary resources for them to be able to navigate through this time so that they can readily adapt to the changes. I want you to think about, again, the social responsibility impact. I touched on it just a moment. But how does this impact societal values? How does it contribute positively to the community? When we're looking at organizations who are sustainable, you can see, and especially when you're thinking about recruiting millennials or sustaining those millennials, those high performers in your organization, they want to know, what are you doing? What are you doing in the community? How can they actually contribute? What does this mean for them? So we're living in a different time, right? And so the concerns are absolutely different. Before you begin launching your transformational initiatives or journey, I want you to think about these and really consider this as you guys move forward. Can I share some examples of companies that have successfully navigated transformation and lessons we can actually learn from them? Of course, we've all heard the Netflix story and the Blockbuster story, right? How they failed to transform and adapt. And so because of that, they are now extinct, right? I believe that there may be one actual Blockbuster the last time I checked. But I want you to think about that. Apple. How did they shift from just being, a computer manufacturer to now they are truly a lifestyle brand, and they have a cult-like following, and people are standing out, waiting for Apple to release its newest and latest product, and they have that trust in their product. And so the shift there, as they navigated the transformation, of course, it's at the leadership. It's beginning to educate your customers about the impact, your potential customers or clients about that. Amazon, we know how they actually started, I believe it was books. I can't remember. I think it was books or shipping books. Maybe it was a bookstore. I can't remember. Online book retail, if I remember correctly. But that day one mentality that encourages continuous innovation. That's another example. They're dominating today, and they have their hands in a number of different things. But again, it's evolving and it's learning so much about your customers, your employees, your stakeholders. Netflix, going back to them, they adapted their content strategy based upon viewer data. Like Amazon, they honed in on the customer. And so that helps to drive innovation and creativity and adaptability. When you're focused on the customer, you have a heightened focus on your customer. Who is your customer? And so those are examples of companies who have successfully navigated transformation. What is it that you're actually going to be hyper focused on to help drive transformation for your particular organization? One of the things I like to kind of think about is when I think about the examples of companies who are successfully navigating that transformation. Where are you today? Who do you need to become today? Where are you going? And for you to be successful in where you're going, when you arrive there, what key skills do you need to have? Do the people you have today, are they the same people who can help you tomorrow? So often it's not necessarily the same, but one of the ways you can actually drive transformation and navigate that is getting to know your talent and your employees. What have they done? What are they skilled at? What do they have an interest in? What do they want to do? What do they actually love? What are they passionate about? Learn, learn, learn. Adopt a mindset of learning of your employees as well as your customers, and then listen. So often organizations and their leaders do not have a listening culture. And I want you to think about that because it's going to be paramount, leaders, as you shift your organization forward. And especially for those who've said, I want to be the number one or number two company in my industry. How can CEOs balance short-term and long-term goals during the transformation journey? I actually kind of just talked on that, so I won't go into that very deeply, but I would say you got to have a long-term vision, right? And most leaders do, so that's not really even the case, right? But again, it's balance the short term as well as the long term during your transformation efforts. It's breaking it down into those milestones and communicating what you've done, the successes you've had, what you're learning along the way, so you keep your people engaged and people actually know where you are and what's happening. Review your progress against the milestones that you've actually set up and identified, while again staying focused on where we're headed long term. This actually ensures that you have a successful approach, right? A thoughtful approach to your vision, accomplishing the vision and the transformation that you actually desire. It's being focused on your immediate needs while making progress towards your long-term goals. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see. I trust this. What metrics and KPIs should CEOs track, or can you track to measure the success of a transformation initiative? That's a good question. Of course, your financial indicators, right? So we all know value creation. So what are you saving? The revenue growth, the cost savings, employee engagement levels, customer satisfaction. You got to have that, right? I want you to think about your employees. I keep saying I want you to think about your employees and how are they actually feeling? What's their well-being? What's your retention? What is your ability to really ensure that they're not getting burned out about with the transformation? Sometimes transformation can go on for so long and people don't necessarily know what's happening. And so you're losing people along the way. So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about, are you tracking progress towards your specific transformation milestones as well as your industry benchmarks to kind of gauge success and identify the areas in which you can actually pivot, the areas in which you can actually improve, that you can hamper down and become a little bit more successful, right? So again, employee and customer satisfaction levels, net promoter scores, things like that will actually be key for you in measuring the success of your transformation initiative. And then also looking deep at the people who are intricately involved, right? Not just the financial numbers. Sometimes we get focused on those finances, the numbers, the cost savings or whatever, and we forget everything else. Let's see what else. What do we have? How can CEOs foster innovation, encourage a culture of experimentation within their teams? We've already talked about that. So it's allowing your employees to feel safe. Can I raise my hand? Can I offer an idea? Can I present another option? Are you providing resources and time? I remember working with a leader who was insistent upon his leaders actually taking time. It actually was a CEO. He was insistent upon his leaders taking time out to just think and come up with creative and innovative solutions. I want to encourage you to actually do that. I want to encourage you to maybe recognize and reward employees who are presenting viable options and solutions. Recognize and reward innovation and learning. I remember working a long time ago for an organization, a leader, and he actually rewarded your continuous development and learning. And that's key. Even if the outcome is not immediate, right? Sometimes we're so I would say hyper focus on the immediate outcome, that we're really not thinking about how can this actually impact us long term, and again long term. And then providing the resources for your employees to explore new ideas. Are you encouraging diversity of thought? We value diversity, but what I've seen more often than not, unfortunately, is that organizations don't necessarily embrace that cross functional collaboration the way that they should, and the diversity of thought, because my experiences bring something different to the table that you may not have seen. So I want you to think about that, or you may not have thought of. And so, are you able to encourage diversity of thought? And I think we have maybe one more question. Let's see. Yeah, we got one more question. So, as a CEO, what are some of the key challenges I may face when leading transformation, and how can I overcome those challenges? Leading transformation is not without challenges. You're going to have some challenge. You're going to have some bumps along the way, right? You're going to have some things where it just doesn't go so well, or the way you actually envision, or the consultant actually share with you. So I want you to think about those who are just resistant to change. You're going to have the people who are just, this is the way we've always done it. This is the way we should do it. This is the way it has to be done. And so those who are just resistant, they're not open to change. A lack of clarity. When people are unclear about what's happening and what they actually need to do, it creates anxiety and stress. It creates confusion. It creates a lack of collaboration. People will see that their style under pressure may actually differ and not reflect the culture that you actually want. You may risk alienating people, right? When you're not including the people who think that they should be included, or the people who need to be included, then you risk alienation. And so, to overcome those challenges, again, you want to have a plan, a change management strategy, a change management plan, continuous feedback, adaptation. You want to let people know what's happening, where we're going, how we're doing with this, what's working, what's not working, what we need to do differently. Those are just a few of the things that I actually recommend that you actually think about as a challenge that you may face when leading a transformation effort, or undergoing a transformation effort. And there's one more myth or misconception that I want to address. That's that, and this wasn't a question that was asked, but it's something I think is absolutely paramount that you know. Transformation is not a one-time thing. It is ongoing. You should always be growing and evolving, right? And shifting. Doesn't mean that you're shifting your products, but it may be you may shift how you actually present or package them, right? You're getting better at what you actually do. And so it's not a one-time thing. We're continuously going through a transformation, and that's how you actually lead your organization forward. Again, I'm Dr. Sharalyn Payne. If you would like to partner with me, or you would like to just kind of talk about some transformation efforts, send me an email, spayne@snpistrategies.com, or leave a comment. And again, if you want to have your questions answered, I'm going to send you the link for you guys to be able to do that. All you got to do is fill out the form, and you don't have to be present for your question to actually be addressed. I'm pretty sure that whatever you're asking is something that can help somebody else. I want to leave you with this. Remember, it's your responsibility as a leader to maximize potential, performance, and profitability. I will see you guys back here next week. We're going to continue on with our open office hours every Thursday at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. Be blessed.